Hey folks, good morning. Welcome back to Sawing with Sandy. I'm going to take a moment today and show you something that is a bit of a follow-up to a previous video I made about sawmill scales for my Woodland Mills HM130. If you guys come on inside with me right now, last time I talked about one scale that I tend to use the most. Today I'm going to talk about the second one. So let's go in and have a look at what I'm talking about. And so first and foremost, if you are new here, welcome. If you are not new here, welcome back. This is my 2017 HM130 portable sawmill by Woodland Mills. You guys would have seen this in action plenty of times. If you haven't, this is it. Last time around, I was talking about the scale on this sawmill. Now, the scale that I tend to use the most is the yellow one. When I bought this sawmill, Woodland Mills sent two different scales. They sent the white one and the yellow one. I like the yellow one, but it comes down to personal preference, to be honest with you. I never really use the white one. The white one, as you can see by this dust mark, it actually sits there for its entire life. So in my other video talking about scales, I mentioned how I like the yellow scale because I like to do the numbers in my head. To be honest with you, this scale as well as the white scale will get you the same results. This scale on the right, it has two sides to it. You'll notice on the far right here, it's got inch increments. Actually, it's quarter-inch increments, but the numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. inches. On the right-hand side of the scale, it says 4/4. That means 4 quarters. 4 quarters is referring to the size of the board you're going to get when you make the cuts. 4/4, if you do a little bit of math here, that actually is 1. So 4/4 or 4 quarters means a 1-inch board. Each of these increments, 1, 2, 3, 4, means you're getting a 1-inch board there, 1-inch board there, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. Why is it separated here? Well, on the right hand side, under the word inch, it has the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Those are the true dimensions. If you set your scale up properly and you cut where the number 2 is, the board that's left on the mill after you've made that cut is 2 inches thick. If for whatever reason it's slightly off of that number 2, this is where this adjustment with this red line comes in. You would adjust it so it lines up perfectly with whatever the dimension of the board was. You just cut. So how this all works on the right hand side, the 4/4 scale, is as follows. If you were to take your tape, and let's just extend it here, and if you were to hold it upwards, you guys are going to notice that the distance between, say, the number 2 and the number 3 is not 1 inch. It's not 1/8 of an inch. It's 1 inch and 3/16. So from that line to that line is 1 inch and 3/16. Why is it like that? Well, it's taking into account the thickness of the blade. Ultimately, once you set this up, and I'll explain how to do that in a second, as you go from the number 1 to your next cut at number 2, to your next cut at number 3, 4, etc., you're going to be left with a piece of wood that is slightly bigger than 1 inch. It's 1 inch and 1/8. That 1 inch and 1/8 allows you to do some dressing with it, or even allows for shrinkage as you set your lumber up to dry. So now let me take you through the steps you're going to need to do in order to use that 4/4 scale to take an actual piece of log into a piece of lumber, like the cant I'm sitting on, and make 1-inch boards out of it. So what I'm currently sitting on is an 8x8 cant. This is what I'm going to make my 1-inch boards out of using the 4/4 inch scale. And how I'm going to do that is as follows. Up here, I've been using the right-hand side of the scale, hence why it's on the number 8, because that's an 8x8. But let's say you wanted to now cut 1-inch boards. If I switch over to the 4/4 inch side of the scale, what you're going to notice is that red line does not particularly line up with any of these lines. See how there's no particular line it lines up on? That's why you have this adjustment over here. I'm going to adjust this, and I'm going to move this red line here down to, or up to, the next solid line. You can see here I'm sort of landed on the 7. Let's see if we can do this one-handed here. Get back up there. There we go. So I'm landed on the 7 there. It doesn't particularly matter what number it lands on. If you want to adjust it so it goes all the way down to the 10, it doesn't matter. If you want to move this red line so it goes all the way up to the 4, it doesn't matter. All this is going to give you is a starting point. So when you lower down the sawmill head, you're going to lower it down until that red line ends up on the next line. So now that you're ready to go on number 7, all it's going to be a matter of doing is making your first cut by taking the saw head down and you're lowering it down until you get to the next number, 6. So now you've gone from 7 to 6. That's going to be a 1-inch board. Keep in mind, when you pull that board off the sawmill, although it's going to end up as a 1-inch board after drying and dressing and whatever else, it's going to actually be rough sawn at 1.1 inch. Okay, so your boards using this 4/4 inch scale, although it says just 7 to 6 is 1 inch, it'll actually be 1.1 inch thick. That allows, as I said, for drying. Maybe you'll dry it and then plane it, whatever, but it's going to be a little bit bigger than 1 inch, 1.1 inch. Now, if we look at the other scale that comes with the sawmill, this is the white one that I actually don't use, but it's there if I ever needed it, I suppose. What you're going to notice on here is 2 sides to it, just like on the yellow one. On the right-hand side is 1 inch. On the left-hand side, I guess your left, is 2 inches. This is not a true measurement. See how it says 1 inch from there to there? 1 inch from there to there? That is not true 1-inch measurements. Over here, from there to there, says it's 1. From there to there, says it's 2. These are not true measurements either. What I mean by true measurements, if I take my tape out here, and I hold my tape measure up there, let's just look right on that one. That's supposed to be on the right-hand side, 2 inches. From that 2, well, you couldn't see that. From that 2 inch at the very top to the 1 is supposed to be 2 inches. It's not. It's over that. It's actually 2 1/8. Just like the 4/4 inch scale ends up giving you 1 1/8 boards. Same thing on this white scale. Right-hand side, from this mark at the top to that first number, that's supposed to be 2 1/8 of an inch. Allows for dressing, allows for drying, etc., etc. On the right-hand side, the 1 inch side of the scale, from that top mark to the first number 1, that's supposed to be, when you cut on the sawmill, 1 1/8 of an inch. That's in direct contrast, this scale, to this one. If you guys look right here on the yellow scale, under the word inch, from that mark to that mark, number 1, that is a true 1 inch. Okay, why do they do that? This takes into account the thickness of the blade. All right, so this one does not. So keep in mind, if you're cutting constantly with this one, you're going to be losing just a little bit of a width of the blade on each cut. So you're going to measure your wood, and it's going to be slightly less than whatever number you have on that yellow scale. Okay, that's only for the left-hand side. The right-hand side, the 4/4 scale, takes into account blade thickness, as does this one. That side does, that side does. Okay? All right, guys, let's finish off with a little scenario here. So let's pretend you've just cut a nice cant, and you guys can see I've got a cant here that I'm going to be dealing with. It doesn't really matter for our scenario what the dimensions are, but let's just assume you just finished cutting, and so the blade is flush with the top of the cant. From that point, you're going to come up here to your scale, and we have the white scale here. Forgive the dirtiness. The white scale has 1 inch on the left, 2 inch boards on the right. For our scenario, let's say we're going to deal with 2 inch boards. Hence, we're looking at the right side. I'm going to look to see where the red line currently is, and I want to line that up with the nearest number. I'm going to line it up with the 5. So what I need to do is, I need to lower this down, and let's see if we can tighten her up here a little bit. Okay, so I lowered my red line down to the 5. That's going to be my starting point from the top of my cant. Now, when I lower the sawmill head to the 4, from 5 to 4 is going to give me a 2 1/16 inch board. So if you can imagine, you just come down, you lower it down, and it doesn't matter how many turns. In particular, right now, you're just waiting until the red line hits the 4. From 5 to 4, once you're there, obviously you'll lock it in. And now when you make that first cut, that first board that comes off the top of your cant will be 2 1/16 of an inch thick. And likewise, if you want to make 1 inch boards, just like we started with before, assuming you just cut the cant and the blade is flush with the top of the cant, you're going to come up here and look at the red line. You're going to adjust that red line using that knob until the red line lines up with that number 10, or whatever number it's close to. If we duck under here, I'm just going to drop this down just a little bit. There's the number 10, and I'm just going to tighten that up a bit. So you guys can see here's the number 10. Coming back around, when I adjust the saw head, lower it down. I'm going to lower it down until that red line gets to the 9. Locked in. From 10 to 9, that will now give me a finished cut. So the board will be 1 1/16 inch thick. 1 inch on the left, 2 inch thicknesses on the right. Keep in mind, it's not a true dimension. It's going to be 1 1/16 of an inch. On the right hand side, 2 1/16 of an inch. So guys, that's going to do it for me here today. I hope that helps some of you. I know I tend to use the yellow scale over the white scale more predominantly, but it doesn't really matter. Both of these will cut beautiful lumber. It's just a matter of you sort of getting the numbers straight in your head. Guys, I appreciate you all watching every single week. Please come on back next time. I'll surely be out here either sawing lumber, or maybe I'll be even in my tractor doing some other chores. In the meantime, if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like, and don't forget to tell your friends about my channel, Sawing with Sandy. As always, you guys take care out there, and I'll see you next time.